and welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, listed in 2020 as number 8 of 42 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am your host, Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert and author of Business Evolution, Creating Growth in a Rapidly Changing World. I created Scale Your Sales framework to develop leading edge capabilities to secure, retain, and grow key customer relationships for long-term value and partnership. Join me each week to learn from amazing B2B sales and business experts and influencers. Tune in for actionable insights and strategies. Are you ready to scale your sales?
My next guest is David J.P. Fisher, also known as D.Fish. D.Fish is a speaker, coach, best-selling author of 12 books. David helps salespeople, business owners, and entrepreneurs understand the sales Sherpa path, where social media, networking, traditional sales skills are the key to providing value and staying relevant. So we're going to expand on all of that. So welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, D.Fish.
So good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here because I've heard the launch of not one, but two books. You've revised your two best-selling, well, you've got so many best-selling books, but tell me more about your networking books and the focus and why you decided to revise them.
Yeah, so we recently launched a second edition of Networking in the 21st Century, and then a third edition of Networking in the 21st Century on LinkedIn. And these were really predicated by the, you might have seen on the news, there was this pandemic. It kind of has, shaped our world for the last 18 months. But I really wanted to look at how, relationship building in a professional setting was being impacted. And more importantly, what we could do about it. Like, what are the ways to create relationships, to network, to use online and offline tools in a post-pandemic world. And post-pandemic, by the way, not mean the pandemic is done, but post-March, 2020, like we're going to be in a world where there is COVID and possibly other pandemics in the future. So how do we navigate that? And that was kind of what inspired me to put out not one, but two books at the same time, which I will say for the record is insane. And I'm never doing it again. Lesson learned.
The thing is, though, I think the pandemic created an opportunity for people in that, all of a sudden, I certainly know for you as well, there was one day where email after email, a lot of the speaking engagements that we do all stopped. And there was a space in the diary, and that's never been heard of before. So you either kind of sat back and thought, woe is me, or you thought, great, I've been meaning to do it. Now you were proactive in that you've been, you thought this is an opportunity, I'm going to capitalize on it. Yeah. I still have 2 manuscripts on the floor, and I had really good intention. Finally, I'm going to get my second, maybe, move my third book. But in the past, what I do is I go away and I write, or I, launch a course. Obviously, I hadn't gone away. So in my head, that's why
you weren't ready.
Work.
Yeah. Well, see, the key is to have a small child in your house where you go, oh, for me to get away from the small child, I have to close the door and lock myself in this room. So while I'm here, I might as well be productive, right?
So that was your strategy. Thanks to your small child for helping you.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I didn't have. So tell me about what is the difference what was the key things we thought, this has changed. This is why I need to do this.
So what's really interesting is in diving in, and they are pretty meaty updates. A lot of times you bring out a new edition, you change the cover, maybe add a paragraph here or there, and then you're done. Both of these books went through some pretty significant revision. But interestingly enough, at the core, it didn't change, right? So what I really found is that the idea of relationship building, the idea of connecting with others. You had mentioned the sales Sherpa path that I talk about, which, in short is just this idea of, in a sales position, really becoming the trusted guide, the resource for your prospects and customers before they need you, right? Kind of putting yourself out there, building the trust, building that relationship, as we said, so that when they do need you, you're the person that they call. And what I found is that hasn't changed, right? In some ways we think maybe, life should be massively different, but no, we're still human. It's still about creating that connection. Where I think we saw the difference is that, you mentioned we had that space in our day. The need for digital, the need for virtual really increased. What I tell people is that wasn't new, right? We've done Zoom calls for years. We've done webinars for years. There was no technology that came out in March 2020 that everyone was like, oh, this is a brand new technology. It's just all of a sudden, since we couldn't go out in person, Zoom, asynchronous video, LinkedIn, obviously, became much more important. And I say that we went through a digital transformation that would have taken 10 years in 10 months, right? And some organizations in 10 weeks. And we're still reeling from that. I still think a lot of sales professionals and sales organizations still wrestling with that. But it just became more of a change of tools and environment, context that we create those relationships, but the end goal is still the same.
Was there also a change of mindset? So you adapted the tools, but actually your environment had changed. Now you've got a kitchen, you've got a little kid on your knee. This wouldn't have been the business environment. Yeah. And it's about accepting that those things are okay. So do you think there was also a shift of what is acceptable within networking, business, the things that you do online?
Yeah, so I think it became much more common for us to accept that humanity, if you will. There wasn't that strict division between I'm in business, I'm in a personal setting. Yeah, even just the idea of, for many people, having that Zoom call, whether it was with a prospect or a client, or even just networking, getting to know somebody at the kitchen table, at the dining room table, with the kids in the background. I think that became a little bit more acceptable. But it's really interesting you asked about mindset, because I think there is a big mindset shift that needs to happen. But I would almost suggest that one of the biggest struggles is that not everybody shifts mindsets quickly. In fact, most people don't. Change is hard. And I think that a lot of professionals, especially in sales, are still like, you have that cohort that's like, cool, I'm going to be on LinkedIn every day. I'm going to start using that tool. I'm going to start using video. Like, if this is what I need to do, this is what I do. There's still a good segment that's just like, hey, I just got to hold on until everything goes back to the way it was. I can go back to my trade shows. I can go back to just sitting there, at lunch, wining and dining a prospect. And I think that those people are going to really struggle, because I don't know what the new normal is, whatever that means, but I know it's not.
I was thinking about this mindset thing, and those that haven't yet shifted, that are just on the hold, waiting for things to go back to normal. And I have a view that actually, when things go back to what the perception of normal is, so they go back to the trade show. Mm-hmm. A couple of weeks ago, I did my first live keynote speaking engagement at a conference. And there was a different atmosphere. It wasn't as crowded, but the buzz, obviously everyone's so happy to be alive.
Right. Yeah.
And, to be out. And,
for sure.
There was a calmness, and there was a difference around the trade stands and the way people communicated. And there's certainly a move more to hybrid. So if that mindset doesn't start to shift, you can imagine that when they go back to what they're familiar with, familiar has changed. Yeah. It's changed under them anyway.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah. And I think what's going to happen is, you use the word hybrid there. I think we've just seen an opening up of the channels that we can use to engage with people. And the offline, I love being in front, like you have a group of people. There's webinars are great and be able to deliver virtually is great, but there's nothing like being in a room with a bunch of people. That energy is, tangible. Yeah. But what I think a lot of people saw over 2020 is the power of some of these digital tools. I've been teaching people about LinkedIn for over a decade, and it was always, oh, I guess we'll get to that. It's a nice to have, but not a need to have. Now you saw people go, oh, we do need to have this. And then let's go, 2 years into the future. Hopefully everything's calmed down a little bit. There's such an ability to leverage time and energy and money using digital tools. So the sales professionals that really succeed are the ones that are going to be able to go, hey, I'm going to go to that trade show, but then my follow-up is Zoom because I can do a lot more calls that way, or I'm going to bring in asynchronous video. Or I've already seen this, professionals that just over the last year have really amped up their LinkedIn presence in the right way, not just saying I'm going to, connect and pitch, spray and pray, nothing, but have really come and built their personal brand, made connections, started conversations. And you think about them being able to leverage that and then add in kind of those offline elements. That I think is the key to success moving forward for the next couple of years.
Yeah. I think I'm really excited about it. And certainly you may have seen, I know that you did so much on LinkedIn with live content. Yeah. At the beginning, you were really offering value. And I think as things kind of move on, you're absolutely right. There'll be certain things live that you do that you probably would have done certain things live, but actually they're better in the digital format. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a different type of live because we know if you're training on LinkedIn, then and someone asks you a question, you can just switch your screen and give them show them everything, give them you can't do that necessarily in a live environment. So there is a certain level of adaptability because you don't always know what your audience are thinking, so you can react a lot quicker. Yeah. I absolutely love the two, but I'll tell you, when I first, when I did the speaking engagement 2 weeks ago, I had forgotten how much more rehearsal time you need to put into. I mean, everyone was really happy, but I wasn't quite happy with it. As we are as professionals, we're extremely critical about what we do.
Right.
But we're online. I've got two screens here. So that adaptability. If I think of something, I can look it up. I can have it on screen. I can react to the audience, and actually, I have to. You have to over prepare for live because you don't know what's going to happen. So you have to do 3 times as much prep and rehearsal. And I'd forgotten. I'm thinking, blimey, I need to charge more for live, way more, because that's a 2 weeks worth before I've even turned up for 1 hour that I don't need to do when I'm online. It's really started to make me think about where my value is and what's the cost of that value.
When we're doing online, all I need is this screen. I have to get this part of me right. Everything else I don't have to worry.
Yeah, like you're wearing your pajamas now, aren't you, D.Fish?
Yeah, no, I've gotten dressed. I'm not saying I've got suit pants on below, but I think that brings up a really interesting point that I think is very relevant for sales professionals, and I also think sales organizations. And the point is that these different channels require different skills, right? Yeah. Meeting in person is very different than meeting over Zoom or running a meeting. Let's say you have a sales presentation for 5 people live versus those 5 decision makers just in the Zoom screen. And I don't know if I'd say either is better or worse. I think they both have different, for example, if you want to do a sales presentation live for 5 of the key stakeholders and decision makers, live would be great. Now you just have to get 5 of them in the same place at the same time versus it might be easier to set up that meeting by Zoom and get more people in. So I think this is relevant also for sales organizations is that they have to start training their people to do that, right? And so, hey, I'm biased. One of the things I do is help people understand how to use the digital world in the sales process. but they're skill sets, right? You can't just put a camera on somebody and go, hey, send some sales videos out. Right?
You're going to lose a lot of business.
That's exactly right. And also, I think one of the real, I think, in-demand skills for the next however long is going to be sales professionals that can actually know when to do when do I have to send an email? When do I have to call? When do I have to have a video chat? When should I get on a plane? Right. And this is a conversation that has to take place, in person. There's a decision matrix involved there. Right. And I don't think that that's a natural one for people. Mm-hmm. And so I think the professionals that either do just kind of stumble upon that naturally or develop that knowledge of which channel to use are going to be head and shoulders above the rest, because context does matter as far as creating the results that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, how much prep you need to do for each of the channels, and the skill, as you say, of mastering each of the different channels. Mm-hmm. How much information do you give on each of the channels? Because some are more adaptable than others. I mean, it's literally, it's multi-layered. There is so much behind it, really. And that's why you're absolutely right. You need to all of that training and experimentation and practice in order to understand all the different nuances as well. The difference between speaking fast or slow on all of that. There's so much to it. It really is, a minefield.
And then you got to think about what your hearer or listener, I guess, what you say, but like the prospect, what do they want? What's the best thing for them? It might vary depending on industry and what you're, delivering to that initial contact, who's maybe a junior member, might be different than somebody who's a senior leader, that, that CFO who's going to, give you the final okay, who's, in their 60s, right? And maybe is more of a veteran person. They might want something different than that 35-year-old director. And so, there's just so much coaching that needs to happen. And so I think it's important both on an individual sales level, but I think organizations need to be very, and this isn't always a strength, they need to be very open with, how do we train our people for this? How do we actually equip them to handle the new normal versus just giving them a webcam and a Zoom account saying, okay, go sell.
Yes. So I love you said they should be selling for their customers, not to them. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest challenges that we saw in selling pre-pandemic. So I think there was a ramp up of in the sales world where, because of the technology that was coming in, the sales stack and all of those things, sales became very much about, it became too quantified, and it became too much about like, hey, what's our process? And there weren't people, our prospects weren't people, they were prospects at best. At worst, they were leads, right? And it became this, okay, we're going to put them through our sales funnel, and then I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. And then, hopefully we'll get a sale at the end.
Yeah.
And what was funny to me is, I came up in direct sales, which is like very old school. And it was always like, how do we sit across from somebody, figure out what their challenges are, and then connect what we have with those challenges, right? And by the way, if we can't help them, like, that's cool. I remember my first sales manager never had a problem if I came out and was like, they didn't really need it. I didn't qualify it well. They didn't need what we had. That's why I didn't sell. Like, that was okay. Mm. And I think we got away from that. And so, when I coach sales professionals, I'm always like, your job is to go into a sales conversation in service to the person you're working with. Now, that makes it a lot easier to quote unquote close the business. Because if you're like, hey, I can help you and you need this and this is going to help, I have no problem asking for the business. I have no problem, closing the sale. But but so many sales professionals they're kind of divorced from that approach. They're just like, hey, it's all about me. And again, I think the more you can focus on the person that you're serving, and I use that word very specifically, serving, every good salesperson I've ever met in my life has that mentality. And I should say every successful long-term salesperson. You can kind of, for a year or two, just try to be slick and just be very self-centered. But anybody who's got long-term success is always working. The new thing on LinkedIn is they call it buyer first, right? Yeah. Which I saw that and I was like, wait, shouldn't we always be buyer first? Why do we have to mention this? But that's a mindset that I think has nothing to do with channels we use as technology. It really is, how are we approaching what we do as a profession? And that's what I mean by sell for people, not to them.
Right. That reminds me of our previous conversation when we were talking about empathy, and it's like, hey, wait, as if like we shouldn't, prior to the pandemic, we didn't apply that. We shouldn't have done that. This is what
exactly
we've been doing all along.
Right. And so in some ways that this pause has given us a chance to recalibrate. I also think it's, as a buyer, and we should know this because we're all buyers too, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to be sold to anymore. I think there was this kind of moment of, hey, I don't want to listen to your garbage sales pitch. I don't want to be on your blast email that treat me as a human, right? And I think we're seeing that there's a demand for that from a buyer side. Yeah. But also, since there is that demand, if you can either already have that mindset, or if you can really shift it, it's a better way of living. I think it's just a better way of going through life, to be in service of others, but also you get more and better results, and it's a lot less stress.
Yeah. So what practical strategy would you offer listeners to enable them to buy or build long-term relationships?
Just one. I mean, I've got a couple of books of them. And actually what I love is, like, we haven't really talked about networking or LinkedIn today. And that's a good thing, because there is so much around just the process of relationship building now.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say on a practical level, is very simply look to start and build relationships before you need them. Right. And I think with networking, sometimes we feel weird, and whether that's on LinkedIn, whether that's in person, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I think this is a good person for me to know. I don't know if I can sell them, or I don't know if I need to buy from them, but hey, I want to have a relationship with that person. And there's so many tools we can use. We've talked about LinkedIn and just being active there, reaching out to people and using tools like Zoom. I kind of have loved the fact that we can ask somebody in our network, hey, you want to grab a 30-minute Zoom call, right? It's not a lot of time or pressure on them. They can do it right from their home office or wherever they are. A lot of times we like to see new people, especially if you are kind of still locked down a little bit. You might be sick of seeing the same faces every day. But it really is, and we've used this word a couple of times, the mindset of, I'm going to, like a farmer, plant the seeds, cultivate the network and the relationships before I need them. Because then when you've built that social capital, it's much easier to ask for the referral, to say, hey, I'd love to, show you our product or service because I think we can help you. That gets a lot easier, as opposed to kind of acting from a place of desperation. Oh crap, I've got to hit quota this month. Yeah. Who can I call? Right.
Yeah. So what would be I know that you've got so many, but what would be the networking tip that you would offer listeners? And, you can tease them that they must go and buy the book.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
For the others. But what would be the one that you'd happily give them now?
The biggest tip I can give, probably, and there are a lot, but one that's really easy is something I just mentioned. Set up one 30-minute call a week with someone who is in your network or somebody you'd like to have in your network. Now, if they're in your network, it's great. You say, hey, we haven't caught up for a while. I'd love to hear what you're doing. That's the email. Hey, it's been a while, Janice. Would love to catch up, hear what you've got going on right now. Do you have time for a 30-minute Zoom call? Let me know when it would work for you, right? Or if it's something that you don't know, hi, I've run across you on LinkedIn, or, we met maybe a while ago at an event. I still had your business card in my bag. I'd love to catch up, find out more about what you're doing. Do you have 30 minutes? If you do that one time a week, you have 52 conversations a year. business and opportunities will come from those 52 meetings if you do it. So that's probably the one thing. And just get there and just ask them, tell me about you. Tell me how things are going. Tell me what you're working on. That 30 minutes will fly by, and you'll build social capital. You'll have a little bit of fun, breaks up the week. And again, opportunities will show up from those.
Okay, David, I often get people that want to have a talk with me. Like you, I'm really busy. Mm-hmm. And I often think you need to give me a reason to have a conversation, and that's not a sales pitch. Read my profile or tell me something you've read, and, because otherwise I think, I really like your profile. Have you got 20 minutes? It's like, no.
Well, that you just hit the nail on the head. Give a reason why. Somebody reaches out to me, and I get these too. Hey, would love to, find ways for us to, be a opportunity, value each other, give opportunities. And I'm like, nah, you're right. I've got way too many things to do. But if you said, hey, I've seen some of your posts. I mean, LinkedIn is definitely a tool that can be really useful for this. I had a chance to read through your profile. I see you're working on X, Y, and Z. Or, hey, I've seen some of your recent posts lately. I really liked what you said about this. Here's my perspective. Would you like to grab 30 minutes? I'd like to get to know a little bit more. Human beings still, we have our egos and our pride. So if somebody actually pays attention to us and like, hey, I want to find out more about this. Or the other thing is sometimes people have reached out because they do have a question for me. And I think this is really key. If you do want to kind of pick somebody's brain, by the way, never say that.
Yes. That would be £1,000, please.
Yeah, but I have had people reach out to me, and I've done it as well, and it's worked, is be very specific. I saw your LinkedIn post on blank. I'm really working on this part of the business as well. I thought this, had this opinion, basically what you're saying is, can we talk about this very specific thing? Like that lets me know that you've done some of the legwork. Mm-hmm. Right. And I am much more willing to go into that conversation with somebody who's prepared. And because they've respected my time up front, right? That's really what it's all about. Mm-hmm. I'm busy, but I do have time for a good conversation. I always try to have time for that good conversation. Yeah. But if I don't know you, we have to remember this, especially even as sellers, when we're doing prospecting, people don't know us, right? People don't know what we are about. They don't know how we can help. And there's a lot of noise. So it is amazing how easy you can set yourself apart with just a little bit of legwork, but you got to do the legwork, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing, and I know you've spoken a lot about this, is, the personal brand. The legwork also includes when they look you up, what are they going to see?
Yeah. So, if you want a very practical tip, go to your LinkedIn profile right now. So this is all your listeners. Go to LinkedIn profile and actually look at it as if you were your buyer, your target prospect, your target audience, the people that you're trying to influence. And obviously I don't know any. So if you take this personally, it's not about you because I don't know you. But my guess is your profile is crap. And the reason why is because you've probably written it, if you've spent any time, and way too few sellers actually put time into it, but you've crafted it from your perspective, talking about what you want to talk about versus thinking about what information that reader needs to opt into you. That's what a personal brand really is, right? They're coming to your profile going, can this person help me with X? Whether that's, buying a new software package or finding new recruits, whatever it is. Always one of the best phrases I've heard about this, and give credit where credit is due. Professor Steven Drought, he's a rhetoric professor. I listened to one of those old audio classes on rhetoric, and he said, good rhetoric is not about what you want to say. It's about what they need to hear. Mm-hmm. And so just ask yourself, your prospect doesn't care if you beat quota by 120%, or you are, we're in the president's club, or how amazing. They don't care how amazing you are. They care about whether or not you can help them solve their problem. So make sure that you're sharing, hey, this is how I help people solve their problems.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about relationships and how that relates to sales success. But actually, I think that the starting point for that is networking. And I think, you have given us so many tips, and I know that there's so much more in the books as well. And I think you've got a special link for us as well.
Yeah. So for the show, for all the listeners, davidjpfisher.com/podcast/scale your sales. And there's a lot of great resources. We got some free resources there. We have links to all of the books. There's actually, if you want that better profile, there's a template to create a better profile, and to also some tips to really supercharge your sales network in less than 5 minutes. So wow. I think it's pretty useful. So you should check that out.
I need to do that.
Definitely. Let's get it.
Brilliant. How can listeners get hold of you, David?
Yeah. So I mentioned that page for the listeners. The other great place, I'm on LinkedIn. So check out our landing page and go to linkedin.com/in/IMDFish, IAMDFISH.
Brilliant. Lovely. I'll put all of those links in the show notes. And as always, it's always been a pleasure talking to you. I'm always learning so much from you. I really love your profile. You are D.Fish rock star.
Absolutely.
So thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast, D.Fish.
Thank you so much. Always. I mean, the pleasure is all on this side of the pond.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Scale Your Sales. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, Janice B. Gordon, to comment and share. I'd love it if you would leave a review on ratethispodcast.com/scaleyoursales. Please subscribe for more weekly expert insights to scale your sales.